Ooh. Okay. Greetings, salutations, hello, fellow nations. My name is Phil, and that, of course, is Phil with one L. And today, uh, I, I guess I'm stuck with these. Today, we're just gonna do a chill little video. During the pandemic, I got trapped in the endless cycle of watching YouTube, whether it be film reviews or video essays or commentaries and reactions. It's honestly a habit I'm still trying to break to this day. So in the last year, I have really made a point to try and expand my library in terms of the stuff that I watch. I started a Letterboxd, which is honestly still pretty fresh. And just this week, I downloaded Serialized, which is supposed to be the same as Letterboxd, but for television. And I'm still trying to figure my way around it. It's very weird because it has you review things on an episode by episode basis, and I would very much prefer to review things on a seasonal basis, like per season, which it might let you do. I don't know. I'm still, figuring the whole thing out. But I downloaded that because I watch way more television than I do film. I don't know why. It's just a medium I gravitate towards more. I also have extremely terrible, horrible binging habits. I hate binge watching a show unless I have to because I'm chronically online and I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but sometimes I just can't help it. Sometimes there are shows that I really don't need to binge, but I do it anyway because I have no self-control. I just really can't help it, especially when a series has a short run, like 8 episodes, because sometimes I'll watch like 4 or 5 episodes and then I'll think to myself, I got through those episodes pretty quickly, so maybe I'll just, I might as well finish it. And especially because I can't leave it on that cliffhanger, and then I end up devouring the whole show in like a day and feeling very empty and sad because there will be no news on it for probably months, because you gotta wait months for it to be renewed, and then you got to wait even longer for the writers to come together and write the next season, and then you have to wait for it to go into production and then post-production, and then by the time that whole process happens, 2 years have gone by and you've like watched so many other things. Point being, I go through TV shows like candy, which is very easy to do in this golden age of streaming. So now what I like to do is I like to write a list of things that I'm interested in watching on my notes app on my phone, and I break it down and go through them based on 2 criteria: what I have time for and what I'm in the mood for. So without further ado, here is some stuff I watched in January. I started this year off with The Goes Wrong show. I grew up watching The Three Stooges on syndication with my mom and dad, and I bring that up to say I love slapstick and physical comedy, but only when it's done right. Needless to say, The Goes Wrong show kills in this department. I remember seeing commercials for their Fathom event screenings in my theater some years back. I've been curious to see it ever since. Recently, some clips have been circulating on the old Clock app, and so it reignited my interest and I decided to check it out. I found that they were free on YouTube's television section, although they might not be now depending on when you're watching this video. At least the first season is, and a few of their specials are too. I have yet to find the second season anywhere streaming. The premise is essentially a fictional amateur acting troupe that is so unprofessional in their ability to put on stage shows that things fall apart or go wrong, wink wink nudge nudge. There are issues with props and stage pieces, mistakes with lines, and problematic accidents. In some cases, the play goes wrong right from the start due to a mistake in setting it up. An example of the latter, my favorite episode by far, I haven't seen season 2, but my favorite episode of season 1 is where the drama class puts on a fictional American play called 90 Degrees. Because the UK uses Celsius to measure temperature, there's a misunderstanding, and so the sets are built at a 90-degree angle. Watching these performers act their way around a set that is sideways just had me giggling till my stomach hurt. Most of the plays they perform aren't real, they're fictional, but they have had specials where they've done A Christmas Carol and Peter Pan. So if you want to kick your feet up and chuckle at some good old-fashioned tomfoolery, man, is this show for you. Next up, we have Mithrigan. Love, love, love horror comedy. It's the best genre hybrid there is when it comes to film, in my opinion. When the poster for Megan was revealed like early last summer, I immediately ran to find more information on it, but there wasn't anything besides like a 2-sentence synopsis. This movie didn't even have a Wikipedia page. Then suddenly the trailer dropped in October, just 3 months before the film's release, and it took the internet by storm. I was already on board seeing her face, but the trailer, oh man, this trailer, I was even more hyped. I did a double feature with some friends at the theater. This film was the first we saw. Gotta say, there are times I want the audience to be completely silent, and there are times where audience reactions amplify my enjoyment of a film tenfold. This was an example of the latter. I gotta say, I love going to the movies with a black audience. The screams, laughs, and exclamations at the screen, it reminded me of a midnight showing of Rocky Horror. It was just so great. I could not have asked for a better experience. I will say though that the film feels like it's pulling its punches in some areas. It definitely could have gone harder in its absurdity in some scenes. It played itself too straight. There were some points where my friends and I were the only ones in the theaters laughing because I don't think everyone was in on the joke. So it felt like the seriousness to ludicrousness ratio was off. I love that we have a new horror icon. I think Megan is already up there with the likes of Chucky or even a Pennywise. We're seeing Megan everywhere, in memes, TikToks, Saturday Night Live sketches, even Drew Barrymore dressed up as Megan on her talk show, and it was really fun. She's a fascinating incidental sensation that I think will be around for many years to come, and I think I'm open to that. Speaking of Chucky, he has a great series currently airing on the Sci-Fi Network, and it has just been renewed for a 3rd season. So it's a really good time to be a Killer Doll fan. After leaving the theater for Megan, me and my friends went right into another to see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This was my second viewing after seeing it back in December. This time I was with a friend who hadn't seen it yet. And what is there to say about this film that hasn't already been said? The animation is superb, the vocal performances are spectacular, the humor packs the biggest punches. I didn't think it would due to how much there was, but this movie lives up to the hype with no question. So if you're somehow still skeptical on a Shrek spinoff being so good, this is your sign. See it now. DreamWorks is back, baby. Next up, I watched The Invitation on Netflix. Apologies to friend of the channel, Morgan. She loved this movie, and when recommending it, she described it as a gothic romance, which is not how the trailers portrayed it. It was more so advertised as a horror film, which it definitely is not, aside from a few weak-ass jump scares. The VFX are so bad and not in the fun way. This film really reminds me of the situation with Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak, where the exact same thing kinda happened there. If you're into the whole fanfic genre, this film is definitely for you. It is very lavish and over the top in its setup. I didn't hate this film, I just kind of felt nothing while watching it. The ending is really fun though and sets up a way better and more interesting movie in my opinion. Next up, I watched Harlem on Amazon Prime. When it came out, everyone compared this show to Insecure, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. And so I'm very skeptical when people say that a show or a movie is the new version of something else that was popular before it. Honestly, I think this show stands on its own. I finally caved and watched it because I kept getting ads for season 2, which began this month. I see why people compare the two, but I would more so compare it to the type of Sex in the City, even down to the 4 characters mirroring each other almost to a T. Not to say it's a copy or a ripoff though, there's just plenty more similarities that could be made. I would definitely recommend it if you are a fan of either show. I'm a single person in a big city type of show. That's why How I Met Your Mother is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, and that's exactly what this show is. It's like a Sex in the City or a How I Met Your Mother or Insecure, but even then the show finds a way to not be derivative. All of the leads are super charming and fun in their roles. To me, this show succeeds where the Sex in the City spinoff or sequel series and Just Like That, where that show failed, not just in its take on adulthood as a black woman, but also class. Some of the characters are richer than others. 2 of them are queer. Some of them are lighter or fairer skinned, and others have darker skin. And this is a very diverse range of characters. One of the characters is a performer and books a role in a musical based on a horror film. I won't spoil it here. It's a storyline that satirizes movie to musical adaptations, and it is hilarious. It's a running joke throughout the first season that made me chuckle so loud every time. Also, the music that they composed for it is unironically good, and I wish that they would put it on Spotify. Next, I rewatched The Menu for the first time since theaters because it is now streaming on HBO Max. I feel really sad because film Twitter is already tearing it to shreds, no surprise there, but I see a lot of people claim that the hype for this film ruined their viewing experience and that they were expecting something really different. I might have had a different experience given that I saw it in theaters the weekend it was released out of mere curiosity and nothing else to go off of but the trailer that I saw a few times in front of other films. So I didn't have any expectations for it. And that's how I would recommend seeing this film if you haven't yet. Just watch it before someone else ruins it for you. As I mentioned before with The Invitation, people were expecting a horror film, which is not at all what this is. I really wish that people had the literacy to just go, oh, this really wasn't what I was expecting. I'm not really into it. Instead of just, oh, I walked in expecting a horror film and I wasn't scared, therefore it is bad. Now, I won't lie to you, this isn't a particularly surprising movie. There aren't a lot of twists and turns, and you very well may be able to guess where it's going. But again, that's not the type of film this is. It's very straightforward in the message it's trying to convey. I love everything this film has to say about artistry and satisfying critics versus pursuing the self-gratifying joy of creation. All this to say, it's a neat flick, and I think you should check it out. Now, when I get sad, I like to watch campy horror to cheer myself up. And so I was feeling particularly low one evening, and I watched Happy Death Day to You. However, I don't have a lot to say on this one here because I'm planning on doing a video on it. I followed Happy Death Day to You with A24's Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I was very hesitant on this one because based on trailers and reviews, I knew that it parodied Gen Z culture. Not that I have a problem with that, it's just a very thin line between nailing it on the head or being cringy, dated, and even too harsh or judgmental. Thankful to say that Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is the former. A movie impresses me way more when it lives up to the hype, and like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, that's exactly what happened here. Ironically enough, I had the ending spoiled for me in a TikTok, but because I had no context for it, I had no idea until I watched the film and got to the end. And then it was just like, oh, that's what they were talking about. I love a great twist ending, one that leaves you saying, damn, with like a smile. And that's what Bodies, Bodies, Bodies does. The commentary is spot on and is woven into the fiber of the film so intricately, even down to the film being lit primarily with smartphones. It doesn't overstay its welcome with its critique of the modern day lifestyles of most teens and young adults. It's short, concise, and poignant. It says what it needs to say and moves the hell on. It's not preachy or rubbing it in your face how smart it thinks it's being. If you haven't seen this film like I recommended with The Menu, go in blind. That's almost what I did, because if you think you're getting a normal murder mystery slasher, you certainly are not, and you won't regret it. Next up, I binged seasons 1 and 2 of The White Lotus. Really good. Too much to go into here. Not that I plan on making a video about it. It's really weird that this is still classified as a miniseries despite having a third season on the way. And without spoiling anything, there is a solid through line in terms of the story. I like how every season tackles its own theme. Season 1 being about race and class, and season 2 being about sex and relationships. All of these characters feel frighteningly and in some cases infuriatingly real. I feel like I could run into any number of these types of people on my own vacation. Everyone praises Jennifer Coolidge's performance in this show, and she is spectacular, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if this is a bit of a hot take, but I found her character like so grating and irritating that I was kind of happy when her scenes would end. A lot of her moments left me rolling my eyes, and I think part of that was intentional, but there were parts where I think the show wanted me to feel bad for her, and I just couldn't. If you want a show about a bunch of different people going on a holiday to these beautiful locales in the forefront with sizzling, juicy drama happening in the background with biting commentary, then this show is definitely for you. Very interested in season 3 from what I've heard about it so far. Next up, I started watching the ABC sitcom Home Economics. This show has been out for 2 years now, and I never understood what it was about, so I never watched it. I always judged it when I saw commercials because it seemed like a show about nothing, and having watched the first season and a half now, I can confirm this is a show pretty much about nothing. That is what kind of makes it a comfort show in a way for me. Now I put the show on in the background while I'm working on other things. I started accidentally watching this show after Hulu autoplayed it when I was done watching an episode of Abbott Elementary, which is a show you should absolutely be watching. And now I put this show, Home Economics, I put it on in the background while I'm like working on other things or editing a video, stuff like that. The characters in setup are simple. It's really not a lot of stakes, not the most enticing of storylines, but the characters are really sweet, and the way they come together as this dysfunctional family is kind of cute and is what kept me watching. Not a particularly funny show, like I'm not laughing till my stomach bursts, but it is very wholesome, and there are a couple of bits that make me giggle. So yeah, I think you should check it out if you're just looking for a cute, cozy little family sitcom. Next up, we have Hulu's Extraordinary. Gingers, here's that representation you've been asking for. So now you can shut up. I saw a tweet that someone was shaming Twitter for stealing from Encanto and giving it to a white Irish woman in the lead. Obviously, this person has never seen My Hero Academia or Sky High, because the story of a normal person who is surrounded by those with special abilities is not a new one, but the way Extraordinary approaches it is definitely unique. Imagine if the BBC did Broad City and added superpowers. I love me some crude, dark British humor, and the show is chock full of it. I watched the trailer and it had me at from the producers of Killing Eve. Fair warning, this show has a pretty unlikable protagonist, but it's intentional. At least I think it is. Definitely suffers from Greg Heffley syndrome. There are moments where I empathize with this character and other moments where I'm like, please get over yourself, Jennifer. I don't know if that's what the creators intended, but I'd like to think so. Exploring both sides of how insufferable it is to be one of the only people without a superpower, but also how insufferable it can be to be around that person, is a very compelling dynamic that I think the show pulls off well. Interesting questions are asked, like what would modern day dating look like in a world of superpowers? What would getting a job be like? What would making friends and other personal relationships entail? They also come up with very creative powers for their characters. Jennifer's mother can control technology, but as a woman from an older generation, she has no idea how to use technology, so that makes for some funny bits. Cassie, the mousy character that everyone treats like a doormat, has a power that is a clever metaphor for her personality. She can commune with the dead. Her power is literally being controlled and talked over by someone else. Throughout the season, it's her coming to terms with being so passive, which is probably the storyline I was most invested in. And that's not to say that the others fall flat or anything. Another warning is that this show utilizes cringe humor, and so if you are really sensitive to secondhand embarrassment and cannot bear to see awkward people in uncomfortable situations, please be wary. It's also quite raunchy and sexual, and it was so weird doing research on the series because it's primarily being advertised as a Disney Plus series, but I live in the US, so it's available for me on Hulu. The show also does not miss with the needle drops. I think I've added about 15 to 20 new songs on my Spotify, but that would also be one of my main critiques of the series, is that I think there are way too many needle drops. It has the 2016 Suicide Squad problem of using a song to transition between every scene. The songs they choose are good, which is why it isn't too grating and not a huge problem for me. They are the most fun when they are used during the end credit sequences. This show has mid-credit scenes, which I'm not sure if that's a spoof of how most comic book properties do, but each mid-credit scene serves as a punchline for a setup earlier in the episode, and they're always quite fun. The editing is also a bit jarring in terms of where they decide to cut for commercials.
No, I do think that would work, actually. No, don't put me on hold, Diane.
It could be really annoying and pulled me out of my viewing experience a little bit each time it happened. The show was renewed for a second season before it dropped, which is super rare, but thank God, because I love when shows get renewed for multiple seasons at once, getting that sweet return on investment. It definitely influenced me to check it out when Hulu slapped this on my homepage. It also caught my attention because there is a character named Jizzlord, and I thought it was Daniel Radcliffe. It is not Daniel Radcliffe. Okay, don't judge me. I didn't have my glasses on at the time. But his character and his storyline is the most hilarious, intriguing, and captivating part of this show. I know I said Cassie was the most intriguing, but Jizzlords probably is like right above her, and they were my favorite characters. So I was the most interested when either one of them were on screen. I won't say anything about his character here because I was pleasantly surprised, and I want you to be as well. If you want some cute, good, fun superhero comedy, check this out. Super entertaining, but also lighthearted in places you wouldn't expect. It was only 8 episodes, and like I said before, I have very bad binging habits, so I finished it in like 2 days. I say that to say it's a very quick watch, so I would recommend checking it out.
Can you hear that?
The ominous music?
Yeah.
I keep telling reception to warn people before they come in. It's my power. I make people generate their own soundtrack around me.
I'm so sorry.
Next up, I binged all 3 seasons of Batman Brave and the Bold. I grew up with the show, but I haven't watched since it aired on Cartoon Network, so I wanted to revisit it before it got taken off HBO Max for some stupid ass reason. I was curious if it held up, and it absolutely does. I love the Silver Age animation and character design. I love Diedrich Bader's voice. I love every time he says justice. I love that theme song. I love the references to the classic comics and the Batman 66 series. I love that the Joker isn't introduced until the middle of season 1 and that his introduction warrants a 2-parter. I love the sheer amount of characters they shoved into this thing. This rewatch also reaffirmed my belief that Mayhem of the Music Meister is one of the best episodes, not only in animation, but of television, period. I love a good musical episode, and this one is very underrated. I listen to the soundtrack so much. It's mwah. The Batmite episodes with Paul Rubens are also great. The show is up there with the animated series, which I also need to rewatch. To me, though, this show is what the Lego Batman movie thinks that it is. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I don't like the Lego Batman movie. I love the references to the pulpy science fiction from the 60s. There are a lot of times where the humor is geared for small children, which I mean, of course, but there are also times where the show embraces the darker nature of its source material, and I just wish it struck a better balance between the two, because those tonal shifts can be quite jarring. Season 1, you can really feel the show dipping its toes in the pool and finding its place, and then season 2 and 3, they go absolutely balls to the wall with meta gags and musical numbers, which are fun, but it's such a jump that it almost made me miss the restraint that the earlier episodes had. However, it didn't ruin my overall enjoyment of the show itself. This show has one of the greatest series finales I've ever seen for a show, and it's probably where its meta humor and self-analysis peaks. That last episode made me well up with tears a little bit too. Having grown up with this adaptation and now it's no longer free on streaming, it kind of got to me. Very rarely these days do shows get to say goodbye to its audience. They're usually canceled before they even truly begin, and Batman Brave and the Bold utilizes its last episode to thank the viewers and go out on a high note. Anyway, streaming services suck. Invest in physical media. Lastly, I started watching Poker Face on Peacock. I have Peacock now because my mom got it to watch our NBC night shows. So, thank God for the Chicagoverse. People shit on Peacock for their name and branding, but honestly, they've got some pretty good, content. They're kind of up there. They're nowhere near being the worst streaming service. Poker Face is their newest murder mystery series from Rian Johnson, who is probably my favorite filmmaker right now. I remember seeing Looper in theaters when I was 12 and absolutely being blown away, and I've been following his work ever since. And I think it's safe to say the man simply just doesn't miss. Poker Face is a Case of the Week show starring Natasha Lyonne as Charlie Cale, a casino worker with the ability to always tell when people are lying. So she's basically a human lie detector, which they say in the and the commercial I've seen like 1,000 times. I absolutely adore the 70s Western aesthetic. I love how cleverly the dialogue is written in that characters avoid answering a question or giving a direct response to a statement to avoid setting off Charlie's senses. It's so cheeky, and I'm having the greatest time watching it. It honestly would have been so easy for a male actor to be cast in this role, but Leone is killing it. I'm loving Charlie as a protagonist so far. The first half of the show is available now. I'm so glad that Peacock had faith in it and decided to release it weekly, because I have no self-control and I would have burned through it in a day and been incredibly sad after. But this way, though, it gives me something to look forward to every Thursday. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching or listening, however you decide to consume your content. I don't judge. If you've been keeping track, let me know what you watched this January. Is there anything that I should check out? Comment it down below. It might end up in a future Some Stuff I Watch video. Yeah. But thank you so much for joining me. Subscribe, stick around. There's plenty more to come. Please remember, at the end of the day, every day, it's all good. And if it's not right now, I promise it's gonna be. Take care, Nomies. I will see you in the next one.